Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 76 of the Great Canadian Hockey Podcast. I'm James Parisi here with my co-host Aiden Sarah, and hockey's popping. Snow's falling. It feels so damn wintry, and somehow I've blinked and it's gone from teams playing 42, 43 games to everyone's almost at 60. This is what happens when you tune out of hockey for 5 minutes. You blink and it's gone. I'm gonna blink again, and playoffs are gonna be over, and the cup's gonna be handed out. But I think I'll be paying more attention from here on out. Because Aiden, I don't know about you, but there has been so much to talk about. Like with you, are you chatting with your hockey buddies about everything that's going on all of the time, whether you like to or not?
Yeah, for the most part. And it's never really that I don't like to, right? Like I'll always have something to say about what's going on, but I don't remember who it was yesterday. It was an analyst on one of the games that I had on with the color guy said something. It might have been Ray Ferraro said that he had suspected that the Four Nations tournament was going to serve as like an unofficial early trade deadline where you were going to see a bunch of teams really scrape together the deals they want to get done before that so they know what their squad is going into the break. And I heard that a while ago and like didn't think much of it and then and then all this happened. So I think there are three trades that we really need to hit the ground running with.
Okay, before we dive in though, we are people, we are human, and if I don't at least ask you about the weather or something you ate this week, I feel like I'm a bad friend or even just a bad conversationalist because like we're fairly lively individuals. So you get up to anything this weekend? It is Sunday, February 2nd as we're recording, probably a day later as you're listening, but yeah, Aiden, you got any up to anything this weekend?
Dude, it is so cold. It
Yeah.
is so cold. And I'm looking outside and the sun's out and I want to go outside, but I know for a fact it is negative 25 right now outside. And it's just a daunting task. I had an HN Live game last night and I felt like I had stepped into a deep freezer when I left the arena at like 11:30 at night. I did get a new job though. That's the good news with the
Ooh.
Canadian School Sport Hockey League doing the same stuff with them that I'm doing with the Rebels, writing and media. So fun times. I'm excited.
Congratulations, Stip tax. Wow, that was an ugly one. I'll own that. Stick taps for our boy Aiden. That's a nice one. We love to hear it.
How about you? What's new?
Nothing really all that crazy. Just working outside, working my way through this winter that I am so stoked to end. You have no idea how terrible it is to be cold and working hard labor-wise the entire day, but your feet are also drenched. Like your feet are cold and soaking wet. That really does suck. But you know what? It's what I signed up for. It's what I do. So not really a problem there. On top of that, this weekend it was my buddy Gareth's birthday. Gareth Barrett, the musician behind our intro, outro music, has edited a handful of episodes for us as well. It was his birthday, so he came over from Victoria on Friday. We went out to a handful of spots, did our typical little food and drink tour around. Started in Yaletown here in Vancouver. Went to a place I'm a huge fan of. That is the Homer Street Cafe and Bar. Very, very nice. Huge fan. When we were there, we had steak tartare, Negroni sours, and some oysters. Delicious. Feeling a little luxurious. Definitely spending far too much of that paycheck that I just got. And then we went to El Guapo for my favorite nachos in the city. They do them with a nice fondue cheese. I get pulled chicken added to it. It's just perfect. It is for my money as good as nachos are getting from a restaurant. I think
We
nachos are best made at home when you're doing them dinner style, but yeah.
we've talked about that place enough that we got to go together.
Yep. 100p. 100p. And do not ever let me say 100p again. Um, And then after that, we weren't done yet because we had done appies and cocktails everywhere. And then we went to Banter Room. Gareth and I had these really good like fried citrus tiger prawns they do. Super tasty. They're on top of like a sweet slaw type thing, but like not a very saucy one. And then I think my girlfriend had a chicken parm. and our buddy Caleb decided he thought he was ordering a bowl, like a Dragon Bowl type thing. It was a salad. It said bowl, but I think it was like a not so Buddha bowl kind of thing, you know? And I don't think he was like, I'm sure it's delicious, but this just goes to show everybody. Read that damn menu very clearly. Very, very clearly. Because I took a look on their website this morning because I figured I was going to end up talking about this on the pod. And it very, very, very clearly says once you get past the name's kind of up for debate. It's a toss-up, right? Like it kind of says bull. But as soon as you get into the description, it doesn't name a single thing that isn't green. Other than maybe like the nuts or like the little like crunchy noodle thing that goes on top. There wasn't much else to it. So read the menu, look at it real close. But yeah, nice little weekend out. And then Aiden, you'll love this. Yesterday we went to Lucky's Bodega, loaded up on snacks, and we went to Duffin's Donuts. I got a nice bacon cheeseburger combo. I love their fries. They're very Costco fries. Like, there's definitely some just quality, cheap hangover food. I don't think there's anywhere else in my immediate vicinity where three people can all get a full meal and a donut for the price of $27.
That's another spot that James and I have gone to
Yeah.
go again.
Well, and it brought on the question. I Is it cheaper than eating at McDonald's? Because I think it is. Think about it. I got a bacon cheeseburger that's about the size of a quarter pounder, but slightly better quality and more stuff on it, and a massive order of fries that are way better than McDonald's fries, and a drink for $9. So you got to think, okay, equivalent would be like a quarter pounder with cheese meal from McDonald's, with fries and a medium drink. Sure. Okay, that's $14.
I think you're right.
That's crazy
Yeah.
that McDonald's is no longer the cheap option.
Well, I mean, and it's been treading in that direction too, right? Like
Oh,
the
but Aiden,
the
they pay their staff more. Oh.
it's the recuperation, I think, of post-COVID when the prices went up, and then after they had recuperated the COVID losses, they realized that they could make more money with the prices being what they were.
It's actually ridiculous. It's nuts. It's nuts that a McDouble value meal is $8. And that's with like a small handful of fries.
I
Yeah.
don't know if there's even a way to segue this. I was trying to think of like how do we get from McDonald's to hockey?
Okay. Well, you know, with some trades, you really, really are getting back the value that you send out. With one of these trades, I don't really feel like you did. And that's where I'm going to start, Aiden, because with one of these trades, I feel like a team went to Duffin's Donuts and got a bacon cheeseburger combo. With the other one, I think they got absolutely hosed on what McDonald's now calls a Happy Meal. The
Remember
team
how
that got hosed,
elite
Aiden, in my eyes, because we haven't talked about any of this once. Aiden and I have done no texting back and forth about these two giant season-defining trades.
Just to be clear, I wanted to talk to James about the Rantanen one, but he was in mourning, and so I couldn't
Yeah,
at the
no.
time.
I actually I can't use some of the words on this podcast that I have told to people when they tried to discuss it with me before I immediately turned around or stormed away. But yes, the team that I believe got hosed is Aiden's Vancouver Canucks because JT Miller, who at times, and many of those times being in the last 2 years, I have thought is worth quite a bit more than this. Now, the Canucks did some nice handiwork as time went on, and I am a lot more happy with what they have now. But the trade was JT Miller, defenseman Eric Bronstrom, who nobody seems to want. I'm sorry, Eric. I used to be really high on you. Jackson Dorrington, who I have never heard of, but I would laugh if he became some hilariously useful depth piece. I'm sure he's a great guy. Sure, he's a great player. If he is included in a trade, that means he is somebody. I am just a guy with a podcast. They are heading to the New York Rangers in exchange for center Philip Hedel, who I like, but sorry, dude, he's a third line center. Victor Mancini, who I keep hearing that he was targeted by Vancouver, and there were other teams that want him, and he made the Rangers out of camp. Well, you know what? He got sent down to. This is an NHL sixth or seventh defenseman. He could end up better than that or more useful than that. They also recoup a top 13 protected first rounder in 2025. I'm sorry, that's a joke. That's the only reason New York's first rounder is really all that useful to be acquired or talked about. Like, the fact that they are in and out of a wild card spot is the only reason I even care about discussing their first rounder. If not for that, I want an actual asset off their team or a prospect in their system. Um, Aiden, I'd rather Brennan Othman than a non-protected first rounder that ends up being the 28th overall pick when they sneak into playoffs and then make it all the way to the conference final. Sorry, dude. I'd rather a known commodity than get hosed like that. Now, Aiden, once I finished running all this down, what the Vancouver Canucks did with their assets, you and I can talk about this, but I feel like all of the info on the table is needed for people to formulate their opinions while they hammer on the steering wheel and complain like they're already doing. The Canucks very, very quickly flipped that first rounder, along with forward Danton Heinen, Melvin Fernstrom, who again, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with, and defenseman Vinny Desharnais, who I have, other than a 15 game stretch, I've never been confident as being an NHL defenseman. Love his size, don't really love much else. He has been a very solid competitor at times, but those guys are sent to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for defenseman Marcus Pettersson, who I believe at times has been criminally underrated and at times has been very hard to watch. Luckily, I think a couple of those times are 2 years ago, but um, dude, he hits the ice every time he is near a scrum. I don't think I know a defenseman who plays more than 20 minutes a night in the NHL who falls down more than him. And then they also acquired forward Drew O'Connor, who I absolutely love. That is a depth player who's going to win you a Stanley Cup. I love Drew O'Connor. That is an awesome piece. I would have loved if they got another depth forward in that deal. I think they could have. I think they maybe should have. But you know what? Pittsburgh needs to be smart with their assets, like I believe they have been right now. Aiden, initial reaction when the news fell before everything else came together.
It's tough because of the weight behind the dressing room issues that both preceded this and I'm sure will follow this. Because they're, it wasn't the problems in Vancouver's dressing room were clearly not entirely exclusively caused by JT Miller. So just taking one person out of it, it can help different relationships, it can help different dynamics, but it isn't going to solve everything. But what you didn't talk about while you were running down those trades was the fact that uh, Jim Rutherford basically came out 3 days before, right? Like, and talked about how this is a situation we wanted to fix, but we're at the point where we can't fix it. And I think that was actually when it should have been very, very clear to everybody with a vested interest in the Vancouver Canucks that they were going to be super disappointed by this trade. Like, that was Rutherford basically going out and saying, yeah, the situation sucks and we have to sell for pennies on the dollar. Obviously, it was a super, super public problem between Miller and Pettersson and the Canucks as a whole. Um, the rumblings are that his long absence from the team in the autumn was due to an altercation he had with their video coach, right? So his fiery personality was clearly causing some rifts beyond just with one player. Um, I like Filipino a lot. I think he has the upside to be a second line center, but I think you're right that he is on a good team right now, not that in any way. Um, Marcus Pettersson, I'm a big fan of. I think Marcus Pettersson could. rise to the level of like a Matthias Ekholm, but at 28 years old, you're kind of getting a Walmart Matthias Ekholm, I think, in Marcus Pettersson. And that's not to dunk on Pettersson in any way. Ekholm's a top pair defenseman. I don't think Pettersson is, but I look at Pettersson and I see Matthias Ekholm if he was a second pair defenseman. He's steady at the back. He's not as physically engaged in the play as Ekholm, but I see him reading the play just as well. He's got an excellent stick in his own zone. He does a really good job at the left point. He's calm. He really often is making the right decisions. And for Vancouver, I think adding a Marcus Pettersson is kind of the thing. If you looked at this roster in the offseason, it's the thing they should have done a long time ago, right? And I understand they had the excess first round pick that they could flip. Um, but I will say overall, like taking a look at this, even at this time next year, I think these as good as I think Pedersen is, as much as I like that acquisition, I think these trades for Vancouver, you're going to look at a year from now and say that was the least we could have possibly got for those assets, right? And I think that's never ever something you want to be saying.
Yeah, I totally understand. And, Aiden, if they hadn't moved this stuff and got Marcus Patterson and Drew O'Connor, two pieces who I really think help them build towards being a contender again, I don't think they have looked like a contender this season for 90% of it. I actually looked at their record for the first time in a couple weeks today, and I am disgusted with the amount of overtime losses that I looked in and saw just how many times they gave up.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was just I was sitting there thinking they haven't shown me if I was in charge of this team, which I'm not. Again, I'm a guy with a podcast. They haven't shown me enough this season to make me flip a first rounder for rentals to help win a cup.
No, and I don't think Pedersen's a rental, right? I think there's an 8-year deal
No,
coming.
totally. That's very fair, but I don't know. I I hesitate to do that for the same reason for a similar reason to how you hate when teams don't fully tear down and don't fully commit to getting every asset they can. I do think this was a great trade, great way for them to do it. I think they had this trade locked up and ready to go before they pulled the trigger on JT Miller to New York. I think they knew this was happening. I think that's what the holdup was here. I think that's why we've been waiting. The Canucks needed to know what they were doing with that pick. I think there were a lot of calls saying, hey, if I acquire a mid first rounder in this draft, what will you give me?
Hmm.
And how can you help my team succeed? And how can I help build you for the future? And I think if that wasn't a process that took a really long time, I think Miller was traded 2 weeks ago. I think it was done. I think it was a done deal because this is pretty much the rumored package that we saw.
It was
Also,
Lindgren instead of Mancini was the only real
yeah,
difference.
but the Mancini one actually came out before the Lindgren one
Yeah.
in the reported packages. And I think it's actually very, very funny how, with all of these incredible insiders who I admire very much, I love their body of work. With this and the Rantanen deal we're about to discuss, certain guys have had the trade wrong and publicly wrong as it's coming out because they immediately get, okay, this big player is going to this team. And then they're putting it together live on Twitter, like they're live tweeting a hockey game. And dude, I saw a couple reputable people saying Keandre Miller was in the trade. Just like I saw several very reputable people saying Bradley Nadeau and or Jesperi Kotkaniemi were in the Rantanen deal. I don't remember that happening very much. That's a new thing. And you know what? I like it. I
Everybody needs to be first to it. That's the issue.
And I like, well, to me, that's not the issue. To me, that's awesome. I love that they're live tweeting this as they're figuring it out. They're
Oh,
like, oh, no, scratch that. Never mind. But they're not deleting it. They're going, correction. This is what's happening. Because to me, that's showing how difficult this information is to just source before the full on league call has been made. and I love that as a former journalist. I am all over that.
If I ever want to know what's not happening, it's just Frank Saravalli's Twitter. That is the most like accurate information, as I know that whatever's on there isn't coming to fruition. You talked about Mancini being targeted, and it makes a lot of sense because he's a 6'3" right shot defenseman that's 22 years old, and Vancouver kind of seemed like they were desperately trying to add size to the back end for some time now under this management group. Um, they get the do-over because Vincent Desharnais was not working out at all, so they get to move him out and they move Mancini in, and that is a massive upgrade in my opinion. Like you said, I think Drew O'Connor's a huge, huge upgrade on Danton Heinen as well. Um, the biggest concern I have is Filipido's 4 previous concussions. Aside from that, I very much like the piece, and I think even if he doesn't grow and he doesn't improve significantly, I still think he's an excellent 3C.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with having a great third line center, and he is that. Do you think the Canucks are done after that move?
No, because Brock Besser, I think, is going to get dealt too. I don't think they're going to walk Brock Besser to free agency, because I don't see this. When you said that you don't think that this team is in the position to be using rentals, I actually completely agree with you, and I think they acquire Pedersen and O'Connor because they see two guys that can fill long-term needs in a way that Brock Besser, with the contract demand he's going to come with, isn't going to be able to do. Besser is in his late 20s now. He will no doubt want a long-term contract on this one. It's his final time to cash out. If he hasn't signed yet, I don't think it's going to happen in Vancouver. Um, so I would not be surprised in any way if you see Vancouver trade Besser and target somebody they think can be a second line center.
I think Brock Besser is a New York Islander by January 3rd.
That I don't hate that. I don't hate
I
the
hate it if
idea.
I'm an Islanders fan watching them perennially spin in circles trying to figure out what they are and then getting rid of stuff and then signing stuff. I hate it if I'm them, but I like it as someone on the outside.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ready to move on to the next deal?
Yeah, let's do it.
Actually, one more thing before we do. I'm sorry I asked if you were ready because I wasn't ready. The New York Rangers now, depending on how they decide to roll out their lineup, and they'll be shuffling their lines for quite a while. Their top three centers are JT Miller, Vinny Trocheck, Mika Zibanejad. Do you roll all three or do you make Miller a winger?
You know what's funny? I was watching the game yesterday and Miller was playing center with Panarin and Zibanejad.
That's
um,
weird and strange.
yeah, Vegas just scored on them at the end of this first period. Eichel scored on the power play, but I have at least had all of the 4 periods of JT Miller Rangers hockey on since he was traded there. And yeah, it's an early Zibanejad wing, but I obviously that is a very, very small sample size. Um,
You know who their third line center is right now?
is it Carrick? Because that's
That's
not
their
very
fourth
good.
line center. On their third line between Chris Kreider and Will Cooley, who I love as third line wingers. That's awesome. That's some depth right there. But you got Johnny Brodzinski right there. It's not
Upgrade.
a 3C, buddy.
No, you want an upgrade that for sure.
You want to upgrade that, and you know what? You have the assets to do it. You definitely have the assets to do it. You since you've been watching, someone I felt like we should talk about, but I didn't put in the rundown just because there's so much stuff. The Will Borgen, who the Rangers acquired in the Capo Caco deal, they signed him to, I believe, a 4 or 5 year contract extension. I'm not really worried about the details. What do you like about him? What have you seen from him, and why does he fit there, if at all?
Yeah, it seems I know that it's pulling the trigger pretty early on this guy, but he's had 2 excellent seasons in Seattle where he just covers the defensive zone really well.
Mhm.
To me, this is like I think the Rangers are looking at this guy and they're saying if Keandre Miller is going to work with us, we think it's going to be paired up with Will Borgen. That's
Okay.
kind of the impression I have because with Borgen, I think you've now actually built a right side of defense that is going to last because if they can lock down Braden Schneider long term, I think Adam Fox, Braden Schneider, and Will Borgen is really, really strong. And that means that with Keandre Miller already in that Rangers organization, it kind of gives you the freedom to look at maybe upgrading on Ryan Lindgren. He hasn't had the greatest season, and seeing who else you can add to that team. But to
Marcus
me,
Pettersson would have looked real nice right there, hey?
yeah, I agree. And maybe that would have been something to explore if it had been Keandre Miller to Vancouver in the JT Miller trade. Um, but they do pay him a lot. They're paying him $4.1 million, but he's really fit in. Like he pretty much didn't skip a beat. He seamlessly transitioned into that Rangers defense and was really good for them. So it makes sense that they kind of, see the value in this guy and are going long term with it. 29
All right,
30s
moving
last year.
on. Time for what I think is a bigger trade.
Yeah.
I think the hockey world agrees because this is I don't know. Mikko Rantanen is like the seventh best forward in the NHL, maybe eighth, whereas JT Miller is probably like the 18th. And I also feel like it's a fan base that was more attached to the respective player. I mean, 9 years in a market and growing in the market, it's just it's a different kind of thing. But not to say Vancouver didn't love JT Miller at times, but regardless, Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall were acquired by the Carolina Hurricanes as part of a three-way deal between Colorado, Carolina, and Chicago. Colorado nets sorry, not Chris Drury. Jack Drury, Martin Necas, 2025 second round pick, and a 2026 fourth round pick. And Chicago reigns half of Mikko Rantanen's salary for this season and then gets a third round pick in exchange for that and Taylor Hall. Aiden, I'd really like to start there because
Okay.
this is the least emotional part and the least important part. Why the hell and when the hell did retaining almost $5 million in salary and trading a scoring winger only get you a third round draft pick from a contending team? This is the same league where a cap strapped Toronto Maple Leafs had to trade out a first round pick to get rid of 1 year of Patrick Marleau.
They also gave up a first round pick for a rental Nick Foligno for them to
Yeah.
lose in the first round with him.
So what did Chicago just say like, "Hey, I got you guys, will do you a favor."
Well,
Was this, hey man, let me pay for dinner tonight. You can pay for dinner next time, but it's like a guy who doesn't know you that well and you just kind of accept it?
we heard they were trying to move Hall, right? And we heard it
Paul said
wasn't,
they were trying to move Hall.
pardon?
Paul said they were probably
Yeah,
going to move Hall.
and it wasn't working. Like they weren't getting apparently even the third round pick for Taylor Hall, which doesn't really make any sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, but the
Um,
Rantanen salary should be worth like a second.
Well, and you know what, James? Honestly, the biggest thought I have after that was sitting here like, okay, so when Vancouver needs somebody to take half of Brock Besser for him to go to a contender, I'm gonna be really happy when it only costs a third round pick, right? Like, if that's the
Yeah, this is a
price,
joke.
yeah, like you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting that Chicago, like you said, kind of just sure, let's
Yeah,
do it.
man, I got you.
Yeah,
It's
why
it's like
not?
a person you meet that night on a night out. It's like, yeah, man, I got you. Get me back next time. And you're just like, yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, buddy. No problem. When I never see you again, I'm totally gonna just give you something. Yeah, that's what I get from this. Now, moving on more to the meat and potatoes of this meal, we basically just talked about the undercooked Brussels sprouts. Um, Carolina
That's
at
the
times
worst Brussels sprouts if they're undercooked.
undercooked, no seasoning, no hollandaise, nothing.
I'm not a Brussels sprouts fan, but
And
it's so
they came
obvious.
from the frozen Costco bag. Like these
Yeah.
weren't freshies.
Dude, those frozen Costco chicken bites have been saving my life this week.
Oh, oh, so nice. But for you and everyone listening, they do a fried, like as I'm talking about, like battered breaded fried chicken wing at Costco. It's like a huge bag of them for 14 bucks. You probably have like 60 wings in there for 14 bucks. And they taste quality. Pop them in the air fryer. 16,
That's
ready
gonna
to
be what
roll.
I grab before the next time my dad comes, I think.
Yeah.
That'll be the move.
Very nice. Good with any dip because they're breaded. You can go simple ketchup, you can go honey mustard, you can go plum, sweet and sour. I even was doing them in some teriyaki, just dipping them in some teriyaki. It was beautiful. But anyways, this aside, Carolina goes and acquires basically an upgraded, super upgraded, steroided version of what they acquired last year. Last year they finally went and acquired Jake Ensel as their rental. From what I gather, they don't want this to be a rental. And I'm not talking about Taylor Hall. He'll fit in nicely on that third line, probably, I think. No, not third line. That's the Jordan Staal line. On their fourth line, I guess.
Why
I
not
don't.
play some second power play unit time when somebody gets hurt, Taylor?
Yeah,
Have fun.
sure. I just don't see him fitting on that Jordan Staal line. But anyway, Mikko Rantanen is a top 10 forward in the NHL. At times, he is one of the most dominant players that we've seen in this generation. He is physically imposing. He's a 50 goal scorer. He's a 100-point getter. He plays angrier than just about any winger in the NHL that gets 20 minutes a night. And he's basically you get the personality and attitude of a very frustrated workhorse fourth line grinder that had to grind his entire way to playing in the NHL and doesn't want to let some punk kid take that from him. But you put that into a massive elite skill set and frame and you inject steroids into that. This
I
is a
think
power forward, this is a sniper, this is a two-way forward. It's disturbing.
Yeah, I think part of the reason that like you don't hear players get labeled with power forward as much anymore is just because the guys that would, like Mikko Rantanen and Leon Draisaitl and Matthew Tkachuk, are just so good at everything. Like
Yeah.
they're just nuts that like labeling them power forwards feels like it's taking away so much of it. And
Yep.
Rantanen's just another one of those guys. This dude's a monster, right? And you don't realize how big and strong and powerful he is unless you're specifically just looking to notice that, because every time he has the puck, he's doing something magical with it. You can't keep your eye off of what he's doing offensively. And you're right. This is a guy whose work rate never too low. It's always exactly where it needs to be, which is something you need to do when you're playing on a line with Nathan McKinnon because he is like that as well. Um, so for Colorado, James, like this deal sends probably the like Mikko Rantanen to me, he's better than Matthew Tkachuk. Like I'm trying to remember the last time that a guy this good was actually involved in a trade.
Um, uh, I'm not going to take credit for this one because I couldn't think of it. I did kind of half think of it, but I was looking elsewhere. I wouldn't commit to the idea. The empty netters guys said Joe Thornton was the last guy this good to be traded.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking, especially because you have the parallel where Thornton was also traded halfway through a season, which
Yeah.
is where the comparison kind of becomes more apt. Um, Rantanen, like 64 points in 49 games with Colorado. He was going to have another 50 goal, 100-point season.
Yep.
Um, but we talked about it just briefly on the last episode that Colorado at the time was having some trouble in contract negotiations. And much like I just said with Brock Besser, like at the end of the day, James, I know that this is gonna sting, but I I think if they were confident he was leaving for nothing, this is a good trade to have made. I just think that when you have a player this good, you got to do more to retain him, right? And not to say that they didn't, throw buckets of money at him, but we heard some reports after that everybody was surprised, and
Everyone.
Rantanen was pretty sure he was staying.
Now, Aiden, I've since learned quite a bit more because I listened to a fantastic podcast episode. It was actually my first time checking out Jeff Merrick's The Sheet, and Aiden and I are both big Jeff Merrick fans, and I finally gave it a listen. He interviewed Carolina Hurricanes GM Eric Tulsky, who told everyone that they have been talking Mikko Rantanen since the summer. This is something that has just come to fruition now after all of that time working. There were multiple facilitator teams in. There were multiple high-end players around the NHL, of which we only know JT Miller and Elias Pettersson that the Hurricanes were looking at acquiring. Martin Necas was not always the piece that was going to be going out. There were a lot of different things depending on the team, depending on the situation, depending on the timing. But this is what eventually came together. They were not going into this season going, hey, we're shopping Martin Necas and we're going to take whatever we can get from him with some other assets. That's not what it was. It was they were targeting a high end player, and depending on fit and timing, this is the one that ended up working out. Now, Mikko Rantanen came out and said in a post game interview, I believe, after I want to say his second game with Carolina, and he told a group of reporters in a media scrum that he at he very recently and in the last time they talked contract with Colorado, he was willing to take below market value. So the common thought is that market value is what Leon Draisaitl signed for. And the going thought is that Colorado offered him a hair. And when I say a hair, I mean a hair just below Nathan McKinnon's 12.6 million per. So they were willing to go like 12.5, 12.55. High 11s were offered all throughout the summer, and they got to high 12, or they got to low medium 12s, but that's where they felt they had to stop for one big reason. You're gonna have to sign Cale Makar soon. We're almost there. That $9 million per that he signed for what, 4 years ago? That's ancient. That's gonna be ancient history soon. He's gonna get what, 16?
Well, I think because isn't Hughes a year before him? Am I remembering that
I
correctly?
think so.
Yeah. Um, And if that is the case, indeed, that Hughes has a year before him, I think it'll be completely contingent on what Quinn Hughes ends up signing for. Um, in that, if Hughes signs and then Makar is better than him, then it'll be more. And if Hughes signs and then Hughes is better than Makar for those next year or two before
I
Makar
still think
signs,
McCarr will get paid more just because he's after.
maybe. Yeah, you're right about that. Because especially if the cap continues to rise, which we know that it is going to make a big jump in a couple seasons up to 113.
Yep.
Um,
That's a giant jump.
Yeah, which will make this Mikko Rantanen contract more interesting. Um, and it makes the 12.5 look low, honestly, James.
Um,
Considering now, I bet you he does get 15 in the offseason if he hits the open market.
and Aiden, before I get lost in all of this, because we're a couple tangents deep, which I love doing with you, and I love doing just for the sake of hockey chat. But just the way I structured talking about this trade, I need to talk about the Colorado end of things now at this point. The Avalanche acquire a second and fourth round draft pick, which I touched on a little bit. I don't think the Avalanche make those selections. I don't think they're done. It is very common thought around the NHL, around the hockey media sphere, that the Avalanche are not done making trades, even though they've already made what, five this season? I believe this was their fifth. Um, I believe they're going after a center. It's a very common thought as well that they are fairly frustrated with Casey Middlestat, who I was a big fan of last year with them, but haven't really loved it since about the 20 game mark with them. But in this trade, they acquire Martin Necas, who is fit right in immediately. You know what? You are never going to replace Mikko Rantanen, but it's not Martin Necas' job to do that. It's his job to come in and be the best player he can possibly be. He's lined up on a line with Jonathan Drouin and Casey Middlestat at times. He's been on a line with Arturi Lehkonen and Nathan McKinnon at times, and it has worked all the way through. On the power play, they have him, Drouin, Lehkonen, McKinnon, and Makar slotting together. I've loved what I've seen so far. Necas is a very high motor player. A big knock on him early on when he came in was, yes, he is so fast and so skilled, but does he have the sense to keep up, like have his game keep up with that? does he necessarily have the hockey IQ to keep up with that? And over the past year or so, well, probably just this season, he really took that slowing the game down thing to the next level. This is definitely the best I've seen him play. And in the few games with Colorado, I am thoroughly impressed. Jack Drury. I love Jack Drury. To me, that is a bottom six forward who I never thought was going to be better than a depth guy slotting in and out of the lineup, who I think can be a perfectly fine third line center now.
At his
I've
best, yeah.
what I've seen. Yeah. Um,
23, like last year with Carolina, he was that for sure.
yeah.
Beautiful goal from Lafreniere here for New York to tie it up.
Nice. Love to see it. But yeah, I mean, putting my hockey fan, Colorado fan self aside, as I am a very emotional fan, the Avalanche did the best they possibly could in not losing an asset and not having to make a panic move when the deadline comes. They went and acquired another first line forward and a couple draft picks and a third line forward in exchange for what is a franchise player to a lot of teams. But I digress. Now the emotional part of it. God, am I ever gonna miss that guy? In his 9+ seasons with Colorado, watching him grow from this like gangly ninth overall draft pick who like had a hard time 10th? Oh, he was 10th? Yeah. All right. Whatever. Close enough. Thank you though. At times he kind of looked like a baby deer out there in that first season. Like in the way that he's not really finding his footing all that right. I'm pretty sure he had a really big growth spurt in his late teens around the time he was drafted. And that frame and the skill level was really a big part of why he went so high. And I mean, I think it was 41 points, nearly all at even strength in his rookie season. And the guy just took off from there. I remember thinking he'd be good, thinking he would be like a solid second line guy. And then all of a sudden it's bam, this is Nathan McKinnon's running mate. And they are both soaring to new heights every game, every week, and every season, finding another way to impress me every time they step on the ice. Massive playoff goals, getting excited every time he touched the puck. And that nickname, Moose. Like, I still remember all the times the Avalanche Instagram account immediately makes a post going, the moose is loose as he's doing some angry giant roar celebration after scoring a massive playoff goal. Like, I will never trade those memories. Even though Mikko Rantanen was traded, the memories are not gone. He was a Stanley Cup champion with the Colorado Avalanche, and watching your team hoist the cup, it's not something you ever forget. So. He will be missed very, very dearly. And I hope he comes back at like age 37, does the like quick little re-return with the team.
The
That's sad.
JT Miller.
Miller just scored?
No, no, no. I said the JT Miller, as in
Oh,
just returned
yeah.
to the old team.
Yeah, I mean he's still kind of like in his prime though. I'm talking like the elder statesman coming back for one more kick at the can with his old squad. Yeah.
Hopefully, an old McKinnon and McCarr will still be there.
That would be super cool. Totally. And I mean, like, either way, I'll be happy to see it. Aiden, time to move on to another trade, though. I don't think we'll spend nearly as much time on this one because it's not as drawn out. There weren't that many storylines going into it. But the Dallas Stars make a nice, savvy deal, I think, with the San Jose Sharks, acquiring forward Mikhail Granlund and defenseman Cody Ceci in exchange for a first rounder and a fourth rounder, both of them this year, I believe. Um, and Aiden, the Sharks are so, so good at things. I want you to think about their asset management. Mikhail Granlund was a contract throw in, and they've now turned him into a first round draft pick. Cody Ceci was not wanted. They've now turned him into a fourth round draft pick. Dallas is stoked. They just went and got the Sharks' top point scorer. Mikhail Granlund, a lot of offensive creativity, solid motor, can slot anywhere in your forward lineup. I would say you want him to play on your top two lines, but he could play on your third line. He's best used when he has a big role. Think about him in Minnesota. Think about him in his one good season in Nashville, and think about him now in San Jose. If he has a big role and he's playing a lot of minutes and he's relied on, he is one hell of a player. When he is on your third line as in a supporting role, think Pittsburgh, think later Nashville, or is it earlier Nashville? I'm backwards somewhere. But yeah, if he's a supporting guy, that's not your guy. I think Dallas needs to play the hell out of him.
Yeah, it was
And
especially in Pittsburgh where it just kind
yeah,
of fell off for him.
yeah.
Um,
I don't love Cody Cece, but Miro Heiskanen is out, and I believe they have another defenseman out of the lineup. I can't remember who. But they that Dallas Stars blue line needs some love, and you can never have enough defensive depth going into playoffs.
and I actually think Cody Cece right now, I've been more impressed with him in the last two seasons than either Matt Dumba or Ilya Lyubushkin, I'll be honest. So to me,
Fair.
I actually think that's a much better option for Dallas. Like I would bet you money that they're looking at that and thinking, okay, if the going gets tough, I want him in those minutes. He really impressed me in the series against Vancouver last year, mostly because there were so many bad defensemen in that series for Edmonton and Vancouver that him being like just okay made him look like a god, um, beside Desharnais and Noah Juleson.
Right.
But um, Granlund, yeah, it's exactly like you said. If he gets the minutes, if he gets the players around him, he gets the touches, he gets the power play time. This is a guy who has been really close to point per game in the last two seasons with a pretty bad San Jose Sharks team. And just expanding really quickly on what you said about San Jose turning guys into into some pretty valuable assets. I wonder what they're going to trade Jake Wallman for because they
Yeah.
basically got a first to take him, and now he is very much now their leading point scorer amongst defensemen. Cody Cece was second, so that gap has widened for San Jose's D core.
I mean, and they did the same with Blackwood.
Yeah.
They got assets for Blackwood and they got him for nothing. Like that is how you rebuild a team. Look at all these draft picks the Sharks are going to get to make, in addition to the prospects they were already loading that squad up with. And then they keep it going. They signed Ford Colin White for $850,000 just for this season. That is no doubt because they have another forward there probably going to move out. Aiden, do you have any thoughts on another player other than Jake Wallman the Sharks might end up moving out?
Ooh. I don't think you're not going to see a Toffoli go because he just signed.
No.
Like that's the logical one from like a fit perspective. But when you look at that contract, yeah, I doubt it. There is a piece of me that thinks Alexander Wenberg would be a fit on a team, but I still don't think that's this year. I think that's closer to the end of his contract. That's a guy that the Sharks had signed as a free agent just to kind of be that placeholder centerman, while they waited for the young guys to develop. Mario Ferraro is another guy that
That's
I
the
think a
one I
lot
was
of
thinking. That's
yeah,
the one I thought you were going to go to.
yeah, he's a guy that I think a lot of teams would be interested in, but he's only 26, so he's kind of right on that bubble where San Jose have to make a decision. Do we want him in his maybe early 30s on our contending team, or do we want the assets we'd recoup for him now? So there's nobody that really jumps out at me as like 100% this guy's getting traded this year. If anybody, it'd be Luke Cunnin just because he's expiring. But I wouldn't be surprised if you saw somebody make a play for Ferraro. He's under contract this year and next season as well, which is why I'm not like totally sold that he's going to go now.
Yeah, definitely. I think Ferraro, I don't think I'm in the minority, but it seems to change on the regular that Mario Ferraro will be traded to uh, a bubbling contender. Say if a San Jose falls out of the mix, sorry, not a San Jose, a Tampa Bay falls a little bit out of the mix. Say Toronto falls a little bit out of the mix, or I would have said Dallas, but they kind of are making their cap space disappear quickly. Teams like that, if they're having a little bit of trouble keeping things together, say Winnipeg starts floundering over the next 8 games. I think that's the kind of player they go after. But I don't think you're going to see your top of the tops go after him. I don't think you're going to see an Edmonton or a Florida make that play for him, you know?
Yeah, I could totally see the Oilers doing it just because it would be an upgrade on that third pair left side, I think.
Yeah.
Worth
I just
saying
think of the
as
price,
well,
though.
pardon?
I just think of the price, what he's going to
Yeah,
cost. Yeah.
yeah. Worth saying as well that Colin White was playing for the San Jose Barracuda. He had an AHL contract there. Um, I'm a little bit surprised that they chose to bring him up instead of um, so far they haven't called up their centerman by the name of Andrew Poturalski, who
Oh,
is a
Andrew
pretty
Podorowski. He was
yeah,
part of the Hurricane system at one point.
yeah, up until like 2021, 22 from the looks of it. This is a guy who has scored like crazy in the AHL, and he's now 31 years old, undrafted. Like we're talking, he's had a 100-point AHL season, which you definitely don't see very often.
No.
So it'll be interesting to see if he gets for the first time in his whole career. He's only played 6 NHL games, so that's a guy that I kind of looked at that Barracuda team, and I thought, oh, maybe he's going to get what has been kind of a rare NHL look for him throughout his career, because he's got 45 points in 41 games with the Barracuda and the AHL. So to be an interesting story, still storylines to watch out for in San Jose. Like I've watched a lot of Sharks games this season again, just because they
They're
are
fun to
usually,
watch.
yeah, they're usually the latest ones on, and that is. For as bad as that team is, they are value. They're value to watch. It's good. So more storylines for San Jose.
Moving further, one more trade for us to talk about. The New York Islanders acquired defenseman Scott Perunovich from the St. Louis Blues in exchange for a conditional 2026 fifth rounder. I do not know the condition, nor do I care about it because this is not a big one, in my opinion. I mean, I say that, and it's probably if he plays a certain amount of games, it's going to turn into a second or something. Something crazy and useful that I should know, but I'm intentionally being ignorant about. Um, at times, I had a lot of hopes for Scott Prunovich, but just injuries nonstop completely derailed this guy. I was fairly certain this was going to be a number 3 or 4 defenseman in the NHL, and I think given the right role, he could be a really good number 5.
Ryan Pulock, Isaiah George, and Noah Dobson are all, or sorry, Pulock and Dobson are both injured. They just sent down Isaiah George because they brought in James, the Islanders, Tony DeAngelo, Scott Prunovich, and Adam Boqvist in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
That is three all-out offensive defensemen, which is interesting. Clearly,
But
there was
Pavlovich always had the IQ where he can intercept lanes and he actually like has the ability to be useful on the back end when he's not starting a breakout or patrolling the blue line in the
Yeah,
offense.
yeah. I would have thought he was the best of the three in terms of a two-way game. But it's interesting that clearly this Islanders team is looking at, especially Dobson, obviously being out. But even when Dobson and Pulock are in, like Dobson's only got 24 points in 46 games this year. That would be a step back from last year. Pulock and Adam Pelech have both slowed down earlier than I would have anticipated them to have. Um, so it makes sense when you look at where the points were from the back end that the Islanders would want to upgrade. It's just interesting to bring in all three in such a short amount of time. I do wonder if they would have signed DeAngelo had Boqvist been made available on waivers before that. That's the one I'm curious about. Um, but it's a team that, we were talking about it earlier when you talked about Besser going there. It's a team that are still very much on the bubble of the playoffs and on the bubble of trying to be good, right? And so often
They're not.
it's
They're
yeah,
not good. They suck.
no, they're
The
they're
team's
currently
so.
no, they're not very good right now. And it's funny that like if you look at the age of so many of these notable players, really only Anders Lee has aged out in terms of being like a stud, and even then he's got 22 goals this season. So it's weird, James. Like what are these Islanders missing? Because if you look at this roster, the bones of it are so much like the teams that were making deep playoff runs. Like where's the magic gone with the Islanders?
You know, some would say that the magic disappeared when Anthony Bovilla was sent off that team. Because I want you to think of one of the best moments in recent New York Islanders memory. And it's watching the locker room absolutely erupt after he scored his overtime game-winning goal. It's watching that crowd just go bananas. Those Islanders fans were so passionate for those back-to-back conference finals runs. And, you start shipping out the odd little guy here and there that was not just a useful utility player, but a glue guy. And you start filling them in, and you lose a bit of your identity when that Clutterbuck, Cizikas, Matt Martin line isn't a thing anymore, and you start handing out all of these big contracts, and certain guys get a little older. You lose a Josh Bailey. You start making trades that you think are going to help build your team for the future, but they really end up just handcuffing you into this, okay, we need to try to be good. That I'm talking about the Bo Horvat deal. And you consistently try to surround your Matt Barzell and Noah Dobson and Ilya Sorokin with the utility pieces. But you know what? I just wonder if that isn't the three pieces that they have to build around. That's my thought. I don't know. I am not, I'm not Nostradamus here. I'm not an NHL GM either, as I keep saying. I'm just a guy with a podcast. But I just don't think it's going to work. I think a big part of that is all the terrible drafting and development, or drafting slash development, whichever one it is. Because there have been a lot of issues there. There are multiple first round draft picks every couple years, I swear, in this organization that you just see churned out into nothing. They end up going and playing in Europe, and that's it. That's all we hear from the rest of it. Like the most notable thing to come out of one of their first round draft picks in recent memory is that Josh Hosang made a rap album. There was a song on there called Poppy for MVP.
Give Simon Holmstrom and his last two seasons more credit.
You know what, Aiden? That is such a whatever thing for me to respond to. Like, if Cole Iserman doesn't become something, I think you need to fire everyone in that scouting department. And I think you need to take a serious look at who makes the draft decisions. Because there's some guys who have seemed like for sure thing, at least depth players, that they've skipped on for all of these like risk it for the biscuit guys. Or
Like
then
Iserman.
Yeah, or and then they pass on all of these like high-end talent guys to be like, well, let's go for the safe bet. And then they draft someone who I just don't care about and I'm not interested in watching. But Aiden, on the more exciting note, you know how every year, every trade deadline, there are players who get moved that you don't think we're going to be involved in any trades.
Yeah.
Aiden, I am putting one of Ryan Pollock and Adam Pelech on that list. I think one of those guys gets moved at this trade deadline. I know their contracts say otherwise, and I know New York Islanders history says otherwise, but I just have a gut feeling. I have no reason to really go off that. I have no information that you don't have, whether that be you, the listener, or whatever insider. But I just have a feeling. This isn't a rumor I'm starting. This is just a thought and feeling I have. Um, Moving on though, this kind of went in tandem with the St. Louis trading Scott Perunovich. There is other news out of St. Louis. Brandon Saad had been assigned to St. Louis's affiliate team, and he, from all accounts and what I've read online, didn't really feel that was the spot for him. Didn't really feel like he should be playing in the AHL, and I mean, understandably so. The guy's had a pretty solid career, two-time Stanley Cup champ and a hell of a lot of playoff games, and fairly well-liked guy from what I've read as well. And I mean, not that going in the AHL makes you not those things, but he believed in himself, and he agreed to terminate his contract with the St. Louis Blues, forfeiting, I believe, just around $5 million. And he signed almost immediately. What was it? In less than 48 hours later,
Yeah.
with the Vegas Golden Knights at a prorated $1.5 million. This is prorated because sometimes if you were to sign well, actually, traditionally, if you were to sign a contract at this point in the season, you would be paid um, the remaining salary. on that, right? You would be paid the percentage of that $1.5 million cap hit that is left from now until the end of your season's paychecks.
Yeah, because technically how NHL contracts work is there's the time that the season encompasses, which is so many months. NHL players are paid per day. So that's why when you see guys get suspended for, like, for instance, X amount of games, and you see that they're forfeiting that much salary, that's because while they're suspended, like however long that encompasses, they're not getting paid for those days of work. Like it literally breaks down to that. So it's whatever the math is on Sod's $800,000 divided by however many days of the season. Like he'll be making the same amount of money on each of those days for the rest of the year that he would have had the contract spanned the entire season. It's not like shoved into half the season. But just quickly, James, like massive kudos to Brandon Saad here because the way you framed it was a little bit different than the way I'd seen it, and maybe I'd just seen it phrased a little bit more optimistically. What I had seen was Brandon Saad wanted to be in the NHL no matter what. Period. Right.
Hmm.
And that drive to give up as much money as he did in pursuit of that drive, like I do not want Vegas to have success. Brandon Saad's already won two Stanley Cups. It's not like he's a veteran who needs one, but I'm almost cheering for Vegas just because I respect this so much from Saad. Like
I totally get you.
yeah, I have absolutely nothing but the utmost respect for somebody who looks at millions of dollars to still play professional hockey and say, look, I am doing this for passion, and my passion is to be in the NHL. And that, like, I can't say enough good things about that decision. And I wish it would have been Vancouver. I wish, I had heard him linked to Edmonton, but he'll make more after taxes in Vegas. So good for him.
Yeah, definitely, man. I think that it's the kind of thing where him doing this may make us see more players do something like this. I can think of a couple examples in the past that, I mean, the names just aren't coming to me right now where players have done something similar to this, but not that, not this exact way where it was just right away, I am terminating this contract, I'm signing with the team, and I am getting this done.
Hmm.
I think more players may consider doing that at times. It's just it's the kind of thing where if you feel you belong in the NHL and you know that you could be playing in the NHL for a different organization, why not? Why not go for it? Speaking of another guy connected to the Vegas Golden Knights, though, Logan Thompson, former Vegas Golden Knights goaltender, extends with the Washington Capitals, who he has been phenomenal for
Yeah, I
6 years
know. I
at
know
5.85 million per.
we'll get to Petrangelo. Canada haven't named a Petrangelo replacement, and I really like, can they just say we're gonna name
No,
Logan Thompson? No, that
no.
sucks, dude.
Because they have three goalies. Their goalies are maxed out. It's stupid. I thought the same thing.
I really like, I don't want anybody to get hurt, but I'm kind of hoping that there might be a pulled hamstring in one of these games for one of those Canadian goalies because Logan Thompson's been one of the best goalies in the league this year. 924 save percentage for this guy. Um, and it makes sense. Remember James Wynn, like this is pretty much exactly what happened with Thatcher Demko, where like um, Thompson had a couple more seasons with Vegas than Demko ever did before Vancouver, but Demko came in and he performed really, really well with the Vancouver Canucks, and they signed him to a 5 by 5, and that was a couple years ago, so it kind of logically makes sense that this is a similar amount of money. When you prorate it to the increase of the salary cap, Thompson makes 585 until 2030, 2031. 27-year-old goaltender, and this is a guy I've believed in. This is a guy they clearly believe in. And I think he makes a good 1A, 1B with Charlie Lindgren. Lindgren's kind of had a down year, but if all he needs to be is a backup, um, sometimes when you decrease your workload, that can help your play when you're actually between the pipes. And it helps a Washington Capitals team who I'm looking through this right now, James. The only guy on this Washington team where I'm looking at him, Andrew Mangiapane is it where I'm looking at the name and I'm thinking you should have more points than you do. Like
Mhm.
it's a team again. I've been saying this all season. Like Spencer Carberry, I don't know what he's putting in their water, but he is getting some unbelievably impressive performances from these guys. It's a really cool story for Carberry. He's 43 years old. He called it quits in the ECHL in the late 2000s, early 2010s when he was in his late 20s and immediately started coaching with that ECHL team. Like he was the assistant coach the next year and then the head coach the year after, and he's never looked back. So huge credit to Carberry for what he's getting out of that Washington team.
Carburetor.
Yeah, I don't think the Jack Adams is like it might be unanimous, honestly, dude, this year.
Crazy. Crazy. It will never be unanimous because there's always that one guy.
There was one guy who put McDavid at fifth in Hart voting when he had 153 points that
Yep.
one year. Um,
There's always got to be one guy. Yeah, kudos to Logan Thompson. Super stoked for him in that contract. Aiden, I believe you wanted to touch on a few guys out of the Four Nations, unless
yeah,
we've already talked about them.
we've touched on both of them. Miro Heiskanen takes kind of a bad check from Mark Stone.
Wait,
Um,
wait. Were we gonna talk about this Heiskanen and Stone incident? Do you want to go far into this? Because I have a lot to think of and say.
oh yeah, I was gonna say I don't really have much. Heiskanen is cutting up the ice. Stone kind of gets tripped up by the Stars player behind him.
Doesn't kind of get tripped up by Rope Hints. He
Yeah,
does get tripped by
yeah,
Hints.
and then he's simultaneously falling forward and trying to get his stick on the puck. Heiskanen tries to make a move around him as he's falling, and the contact Stone makes with Heiskanen's leg looks pretty bad.
Okay, so
So you
um
go. Yeah, take it.
yeah. Everyone online is all like they have two thoughts and they're only able to have tunnel vision on one of these two thoughts. They cannot look at all three factors in the equation, which really pisses me off. Also, it's like I get it, you're a hardo, Homer, super fan, whatever.
And it's
Okay,
Texas,
so
so
there are the people who are just like, Stone was tripped. He did nothing wrong. Stone was tripped. And then there's the people who are he was going way too hard for the puck. He shouldn't have made that tried to make that contact. Blah 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 blah. Dirty play, dirty Stone. He is such a dirty guy and he is such a jerk. Okay, so there are three factors to consider, and you should consider all of them when making your assumption. When you watch the play in real time, you can't even really tell that much that he was tripped. Okay? Like it was fairly light contact, but anyone who's played hockey knows you get a stick tangled up in your skates as you are making motions and off balance. That's a trip, regardless of how bad of a trip it was or how subtle it was. That is a trip. You did lose your control at least somewhat. All right, factor number two. Stone really committed to going for that puck. And not even just that puck. I'm talking Heiskanen's whole lower body too, and stick. Like, regardless of whether he was tripped or not, sorry, he was. He was, for all of the people who don't care about that or are ignoring that. Um, even after being tripped, the dude did not need to commit that hard to ripping. Like he wanted to rip Heiskanen's entire lower body out. That is that is a fact. You can see that he's going for that. And then factor number three in my argument. Sorry, dude, it's hockey. It happens pretty fast. It's just like this is a high speed sport and like this is a collision involving three full grown men on skates with sticks moving at high speeds. Someone's gonna get hurt. I'm sorry that Heiskanen ended up like this, but no one's really super at fault. Heiskanen actually could have been a little bit more aware from what I was looking at. Stone did not need to commit that hard, and Hintz didn't need to trip him. So it's an all fault slash no fault. Check, please.
yeah, that's all right. I wasn't as privy to the controversy surrounding the blame
Oh
game. I
God, the
knew,
comment sections are nuts.
yeah, yeah.
Nuts. Because you got to think of everyone from Finland going, wait, the best defenseman we're icing at this tournament is Rasmus Ristolainen. Dude, they just added Urho Vakanainen as a replacement.
Yeah, that's bad.
That is gross. Like, that's not even just bad. That's not an NHL defenseman. Shouldn't be in my eyes. I think
He's
anyone who's
playing for
watched him
the
play hockey, I don't really love it. I'm not really loving what I see from him.
yeah, he's playing for the Rangers on their third pair right now. He's
That's
fine.
so good for them. I'm really
He's
happy for them.
he's
I'm really
fine.
happy for him.
Yeah.
You know, if you're gonna be bad on a team, at least you get to be bad in New York and get to enjoy being a Ranger.
But I just James, just a second, okay? Because if you're Miro Heiskanen right now, you're upset. Like 25 years old, the last time you play for your country, like he got to play in the men's Olympics in 2018. He was in the World Juniors in 2017 and 2018. But if you take a look back at Finland teams, like his World Junior teams were below average Finnish squads. His Olympic team was the tournament before Finland won the gold medal in the Olympics in Beijing. And I just feel for somebody like Miro Heiskanen because it like it's gotta be gutting. This is the opportunity to play for your country best on best level for the first time. And I just think about how lucky some of these players are to be playing best on best hockey and to be selected by their countries. And I think about all the guys that would have loved to have been selected for their countries. And I think about the fact that Alex Petrangelo's on the ice right now and he's not playing for Canada. And I have an issue with that in a big, big way. Like, this is an honor. Playing for Canada is an honor. And seeing Petrangelo play 25 minutes after dropping out of the tournament made me kind of sick.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Yeah,
Is it an honor or is this a stupid cop-out tournament to make us not think of the fact that they robbed us of tons of Olympics over and over and over again? And this stupid tournament doesn't even have many countries in it, and let alone like a couple of the best ones. Like, sorry, Czechia just won a damn world championship and you're not involved. See ya, joke. I'm damn near taking them as much as Finland. I
well,
think they're just as good of a team. And then, no. Hold on. On top of this, the way they've rolled this whole stupid thing out with like, oh my God, guys, do you want to see who the captains are? Like it all just feels like a stupid hokey cop out, and I would have been just as happy with like anything else or not even doing this Four Nations face off. I don't even need it to have happened.
I don't know how much of that you're wrong about, actually. I think there's validity and truth in all of that. I didn't say going to the Four Nations tournament was the honor, though, right?
Oh,
Because to me, it's not. It's your country calling you. How many guys can say that?
is
How
it
many
your
guys
country
can
calling
say
you or is it the
the,
NHL? Because this is an NHL event.
to me, the pride that this Canadian team should be playing with, it doesn't matter. You haven't lost a game. And I know there hasn't been a tournament since 2016. You haven't lost a game at the best on best level in 15 years, dude. 15 years since we watched them lose. So to me, I'm that's what if I'm Canadian and I am Canadian and I do care about it even just as a fan, like that is what I think all of these players in the face of your superiority in this sport being as in threat as it is right now. To me, it's being a part of a group and a country and a nation that hasn't lost at this level since 2010. And that to me is where like show up and be part of the next however many wins in a row so that at the end of the 2026 Olympics they've won everything in a row without like that's what I want. I want
With the NHL
2026.
players.
Yes, I want the 2026 Olympics. What
Without that, we got curb stomped.
yeah, I want I want the 2026 Olympics to be they have literally won every single best on best game they could have since the 2010 group stage. Like that is I want that very badly. Um like I'm I'm a patriotic Canadian hockey fan more so than a lot of other people are, right? It comes out a lot. This is no different. So to me, like the turning it down because like right now, if Quinn Hughes says I can't go, like Quinn Hughes is hurt, man. Like his arm, his hand is screwed up. Like it is not good. So if Quinn Hughes says I have to address this, to me, if I'm an American fan, I'm just as upset if he keeps playing for Vancouver, right? Like I think Quinn Hughes would be best served to stop playing right now for the Canucks too. But the problem I had was Petrangelo deciding I'm good enough to play for Vegas, right? And
Okay,
and
okay, okay. Again, this isn't something I necessarily believe and something I stand behind, but just to play devil's advocate again, the last one I do kind of believe.
well, the
But
last one you're right about like the criticisms of the tournament. Like I
Mhm.
completely agree with you. And again, you
that
hear
it's
me.
hokey NHL put on BS
Yeah,
also.
and guess what? If the Americans beat Canada next Saturday, that's exactly what I'm gonna think this was. So
Okay.
I'm jumping right on board if they don't
I will
succeed.
criticize you unless you feel that way the whole time, though.
I definitely feel that way about this tournament. That it was completely like a
Sorry, guys,
shell.
they took all your other stuff away.
Yeah, it is a shell of what it should be and could have been if anybody had any sort of stones, like
I
any
don't even
guts
like the
whatsoever.
layout. I don't even like the way they
No,
laid
James,
the
James,
games.
it's
Oh,
just because they like it is the cowardice not to address Russia, I think is what this was. It was the
yeah.
cowardice not to address Russia. So I'm always going to criticize a decision made by an organization that to me, like at the end of the day, I understand it's a business, but to me like the business is only a business because of the money from the fans. So you should be listening to the fans is my 2 cents. And the fact that it was so obvious what the fans and the players wanted. Um, and this is what we got. Yeah, no, I agree with you that that's not very good.
But
Make your
to
point
play
about
devil's
Petrangelo.
advocate on Petrangelo,
Yeah.
yeah. Because you compared it to if Quinn Hughes were to do something like that. And I think it's totally different given their age. Alex Petrangelo has played a lot of games. And I think he's looking at this and going, if I hurt myself at this stupid tournament that isn't even that special, when I have a good chance of making Canada's actual Olympic team next year, I think I would rather be able to be all in for my team that I am with 365 days a year.
And you know what? Maybe it's the optics because if like now he had said, I'm hurt, I can't go, and he stopped playing for Vegas, like I wouldn't care, right? It's just the fact that it's literally to me, James, I'm sorry, it feels the opposite of what I love so much about what Saad did. Because what I love so much about what Saad did was it is it is the money is secondary. Whereas Petrangelo's like, you know what, these guys are paying me. I'm gonna keep playing for them. I'm gonna
Well,
use
no,
the
that's
time.
not the way I was describing it though. Like that is his team. Those are his brothers. That's his family that he's with all the time. All of the time. And these are the people he goes to war with daily, as opposed to a hokey tournament. And you know what? Even more, going even further, after all of the terrible things that have come out about Hockey Canada, do you think all of these guys want to pull that maple leaf over their chest? I guarantee
Yeah,
there's a lot of guys who are disgusted about the thought of even doing that.
that's fair. That's really fair. Well, and again, it's not like it's like you said, right? Like I hadn't been really factoring that in just because it's an NHL tournament, right? But I still think maintaining the fact that you are the greatest hockey country in the world, full stop, is important to if you're a Canadian hockey person, that should be important to you. That's what I think.
Hmm. Totally fair. Totally fair. To bookend this, I think that's third priority out of the that and then the two other thing you mentioned and the two things I mentioned. That's just my thought. That's my 2 cents. I know you wanted to say a couple positive things about Anze Kopitar.
37 years old. This guy's been going since like 2006, 7, I think was his rookie year. He's got almost like he's I think like a half dozen, just a handful shy. He's got like 44 points in 50 some games. Like he's a handful shy of a point per game again. Like he hasn't had an off year ever. Like he is just unbelievably consistently such a dominant player on the ice. And we talked about this a little bit with Colin Fraser when we had him on for an interview a little while ago, where Fraser called Kopitar, I think, the most underrated player in the NHL. And it's not just what he's done for so long, but it's what he's continuing to do. He's 37 and he is still the best player on that Kings team most nights. Him and Adrian Kempe dominate the game together, and uh, it's so unbelievably like just impressive to me to watch Kopitar go out on the ice game and game out. We give a lot of love to the Sharks this season so far, just because of how much we've been impressed with them. But I was watching a Kings game the other night, and I felt like it was just me watching a 29-year-old Anze Kopitar buzz around the ice and dominate at both ends. But he is doing this at 37, so I know that the Ovechkin and the Crosby will be what the focus is on for the rest of the season for good reason, just because you've obviously got Crosby going into this Four Nations tournament. Could be his last kick of the can. I hope he's on the Olympic team next year. And then obviously Ovechkin chasing the record. But in terms of veteran forwards that are still getting it done, Kopitar deserves a lot of credit as well.
Definitely, man. Definitely. And I love giving the flowers. You want to add a thought about John Klingberg?
Yeah, so we've talked Klingberg. I think this would be the third different third different podcast this season that we've talked about John Klingberg. But I wanted to just touch on something he said to Mark Spector. I'm not a fan of Mark Spector personally and his work with the Oilers. But it was interesting to hear Klingberg say to him, quote, "I feel like a kid again." Spector tweeted that at the end of a tweet in which he said, John Klingberg, comma, who is scheduled to play tonight for Edmonton, comma, just told me that he had double hip surgery at age 18 and again at age 21. He said he has never played pain-free in the NHL until now after his latest surgery. And that's where Klingberg said, I feel like a kid again. So I criticized him a lot last year for when he was in Toronto because it didn't look like a player that was at the level that he should have been. But I'm very reassured hearing that from a guy that we were both once really big fans of. So hopefully, again, we've talked about this already that we're crossing our fingers for this guy, but cross your fingers that at age 32 we can see John Klingberg make himself a little bit of a comeback, because if it was just the injuries and the problems with his hips that were slowing him down, it'd be good to see what he can do once he's freed of those limitations.
Aiden, I definitely agree with you there. I look forward to watching him the rest of the season as with a lot of other guys. But last pod, I think maybe the one before, I talked a little bit about the hockey guy of the year and these little things that make hockey players so tough and such warriors on ice, and some of these things where you go, "Oh my God, how is he even doing this?" Or for that matter, how is she doing this? There are a lot of female hockey players that are doing a lot of the same things, and no doubt will we be shining a light on one of them at some point. Last time we talked about Clayton Keller. This time I'm talking about James Van Riemsdyk. Aiden, are you familiar with the incident I'm talking about?
Not off the top of my head. He got a high stick, right?
Okay, all right, yes, James Van Riemsdyk, and this is from Aaron Portzline, who does a lot of incredible work around the Columbus Blue Jackets. He is one hell of a writer and reporter, big fan of his stuff. Uh, JVR lost four teeth and needed 30 plus stitches on the Ian Cole high stick in Friday's win in Utah. 30 plus. I don't know if anyone listening to this has ever had stitches, but my 9 stitches was a lot. That was ridiculous. That put a finger back on. Um, JVR had teeth removed and stitches to return to action. He assisted on one of the comeback goals and then needed more work after the game in Salt Lake City. A post-game X-ray revealed that a tooth was still lodged in his bottom lip after it was stitched back up. So a stitch was removed, the tooth was dislodged, and then he's stitched back up again. Then came a bone graft and root canals. He's eating through a straw. He's playing tonight. That was today. That was a tweet from this morning.
That is
Yeah.
unreal.
And then the Columbus Blue Jackets tweeted out a picture of him wearing the visor with the bubble cage under. And dude, I love this sport. Like You know what? I work through the odd injury here and there, and I think, God, like this is just terrible. But then I think of the fact that someone is doing that every day to play a game. But that game is their job, and they take their job so seriously that they're doing this. I'm sorry, but you can go and look at NBA news and look at the last 20 things that guys missed a game for injury-wise, and you're gonna puke after hearing what one hockey player did. Me or Aiden will try and find the photo. Unfortunately, I've mostly only found the bubble cage photos. I don't have anything snipped from the broadcast or anything like that. But
I'm
man,
still looking and I can't find it. I've been
yeah,
looking since you
no,
brought it up.
I think the only way is going to be able to find a replay of the game and
Yeah,
play that.
yeah, I guess, dude, I don't know where to get a replay of a Utah Columbus game from last Friday. That's the problem.
The Friday we just had probably Sportsnet now, I would think.
It would only be if they had the game on Sportsnet though, I think.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
like
Yeah.
right
Anyway.
now. Yeah.
We'll dig around, see what we can find. Maybe we can find something, maybe we can't. But regardless, kudos to JVR, stick taps, or as I uh said wrong earlier in the pod. What was it? Spick tax or something like that.
Something like
Something.
that. I've also been doing that a lot lately, so no worries.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one. Moving on. In our rundown, we always have a junior hockey section, and I was about to throw to Aiden and ask him what he wants to do for junior, but in our rundown that he mostly put together, under junior, he put nah. So I take it we're skipping that. Nothing too exciting at the moment, and we had a lot of NHL stuff to get to. Trivia, Aiden, I don't have any trivia for you. I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing. I need to step my game up on this one.
Do you have a movie?
I I don't just have a movie. I have a pair
Okay.
of movies. One
Okay,
is secret.
I also have a pair of movies, so I'll implore you to back pocket one of them for the next time.
Well, these movies are one of them is a sequel to the other, and they're basically the same thing, except the second one is stupider and goofier and made me laugh almost more.
Ooh, okay, then absolutely, let's hear it.
Aiden, I've talked a lot on this podcast when referencing movies like Old School, Step Brothers, Blades of Glory, things like that about how super bad. Um, Before the age of memes, people used to just quote these movies. Like it would be entire conversations between two to three dudes would just be quoting these movies. Another one of these movies is Anchorman, The Legend of
No.
Ron Burgundy. So I rewatched the first one, which is from 2004. No memes in 2004. Those aren't even a thing. The cat going, I can has cheeseburger hadn't even emerged from the slums of the internet yet. And then I went and watched Anchorman 2, The Legend Continues, which you know what? May even be funnier. It might be,
I
but
haven't
they're
seen the second one.
absolutely hilarious. Both so good.
I like the first one. It's funny.
I had no idea that the quote, 60% of the time it works all the time, was from Anchorman 1. I had
Yeah, it's
no
from
I quote that all the time. That's a Paul Rudd line about a cologne called Sex Panther.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. That is if I think Anchorman, I think him dropping that line and then the cut to Will Smith like that doesn't make any sense.
Also, Steve Carell's character, Brick Tamlin, who's only able to use like 10% of his brain or whatever that is such a hilarious character that like I actually don't think any actor would just go and play now. I think that is a bygone era where like a big name comedy actor is like, yeah, I'll play this guy who only uses 10% of his brain. Sure. Why not? And one of the coolest things about those movies is the fight scenes between all the news teams. So like Ron Burgundy's rival Wes Mantooth on the Channel 9 evening news team is played by Vince Vaughn, and he has his like news cronies, and they all bring like medieval weapons and have a fight in a bush, or like in a field or whatever. And then out of nowhere pops up. Ben Stiller, who is part of the all Spanish news team, and then it's like, oh God, who else? There's a handful of other ones, and then oh yeah, Luke Wilson's one of them and his news team. But then in the second movie, it's Liam Neeson and the History Channel news department. And then it's Will Smith and the ESPN news department. And then it's all of these random guys, Sacha Baron Cohen and the BBC like radio news extra detachment plus. It's just like it's so hilariously stupid. Kristen Wiig's really funny in the second one. It's it's just such a fun little way to spend your weekend full of laughs. I had a little bit of a hangover going into yesterday, and I very, 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 very much enjoyed watching Will Ferrell do that. Just a little tidbit. I also watched the new movie on Prime. I believe it's called You're Cordially Invited. Cordially Invited. It's Will Ferrell, Jimmy Tatro, and Reese Witherspoon, and it's about like two weddings that are double booked, and like I don't know, it's like it's kind of funny. Like it's like better than some new comedies, but it's not as good as some new comedies. Like I would reserve that for a Tuesday night while you're cooking dinner. That's what that's meant for. But Anchorman, that's its own experience. To you, Aiden.
Have you seen A Real Pain yet?
Aiden, I watched that in theaters and told you lots about it. I actually reviewed it on this pod,
I thought so because that was the intro to Kieran Culkin for me, was you talking about this movie. Because then I watched Succession
which
with
I
him
told
in
you
it.
to watch because of Kieran Culkin for a great
Yeah,
deal
yeah.
of time.
I thought it was this one. I could not remember what Kieran Culkin movie like made the Succession segue because that was how we got onto Succession and I watched the show. Um, but I finally did get around to seeing A Real Pain and I loved it. It was very, very good.
Have you seen the budget for that movie?
It was very low, was it not?
Yeah, I believe it's less than $50,000.
Yeah, yeah. But Eisenberg's script is awesome. He does well opposite Kieran Culkin, but Kieran Culkin makes the movie with his character.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it was awesome. It was very good.
Just today I listened to Jesse Eisenberg on an episode of Smartless, a podcast hosted by Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett. Huge, huge, huge fan of that podcast. And I believe two or three episodes ago they had Kieran Culkin on there, who is exactly himself in damn near every role he plays. He's just as strange, silly, and neurotic, and also intelligent at the same time. And it's exactly what you want to hear from him. It was super cool to hear from Jesse Eisenberg as well. This is not a paid ad. I do truly enjoy this podcast. You are very, very much encouraged to check it out if you like movies, TV shows, entertainment, and everything in between. Unless you are currently listening to our podcast, you have to, which in that case, you have to finish this episode and then go there because that would be really messed up if you just left us hanging like that, especially because we're almost done our episode. Sorry.
Yeah, last thing, the Canucks and the Red Wings are playing tonight, and Quinn Hughes took warm up but isn't in the lineup, which further exemplifies the nagging injury that he seems to have.
Aiden, any cool plans or anything like that in the next week?
No, getting started with the new job with the CSSHL. I have two games next weekend, but I got a flight back on Valentine's Day, so I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Beautiful. Love to hear it. I think I will be taking myself on a solo date to Tuesday's Colorado Avalanche game in Vancouver. I've only been to one hockey game this year, and I think I only went to one last year. So I'm doing the thing, and I'm going to grab a last minute ticket on an app from a company that I wish would sponsor us because they sponsor every other damn podcast. That one is it starts with a G and ends with an aim time. Sponsor us, please. We would love to pump your ads. I will take a quarter of a penny per ad. This negotiation is closed for now. Yeah, Aiden, unless you have anything else to add, we can't wait to see you in the next one. We thank you all for listening so much as we get closer to 100 episodes, which feels not that far away, even though that's another half a year probably. So without further ado, let's roll that outro. Thanks, guys.